Hi, welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we're working on a 2002, it's a Ford Escape. The problem with this particular vehicle is a customer's driving a car, or a truck, steps on the brakes feel nice and firm, and as it comes into a stop, all of a sudden the brakes just fail and go right straight down to the floor, and the brake light comes on the dashboard. So I have a suspicion what the problem is, because this vehicle was in by me probably about 6 months or a year ago, and at that time I recommended to the owner of the vehicle some additional work that was required, and they did not come back for us. So I have a pretty good idea what the problem is. Let me just show you what's going on, and we'll lift it up and we'll confirm my suspicions. All right, and don't forget, subscribe to my channel, and if you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up. I'll show you what's going on. All right. This is what's going on. I know it's a little bit dark down here to see, but turn the key to the on position, customer's driving, steps on the brake, and the brake goes right to the floor. Well, not right to the floor, but almost to the floor. And the brake light is on the dashboard here once the vehicle is running. So let's lift it up, get the wheels off, and let's take a look at it and find out what's going on. Get the wheels off and see what we have here. Okay, after getting the wheels off, it's pretty obvious what the problem is. This is the brake line right here that goes into the back of the wheel cylinder, and as you can see, this side here, it's in pretty poor condition. This is what they were supposed to bring it back for, but this side over here is where the blowout took place. That line blew out, lost all the pressure, and therefore lost all the brake fluid. All the pressure to the rear wheels was lost, so he was basically stopping on the front, which made it pretty hazardous because yesterday it was snowing pretty hard, and when you have an all-wheel drive, everybody knows that those wheels just keep on turning. So that's the problem right there. The line blew out. So we're going to be replacing this line. We're going to be changing the line on this side here also. Not really too bad of a job. And we're also going to be replacing the front jaws because this was part of the recommendation that was made at the time when we did work for them. You can see this line is in pretty poor condition here also. And this one here is pretty obvious too. You can see what kind of condition that's in. That's a failure waiting to happen. This is what was recommended, and it wasn't performed, which is understandable. You know, money sometimes is pretty tight for everybody, but in this case we have no choice now but to go ahead and do it. So before you do anything, before you change any lines or do anything, you want to make sure that your bleeder valves open up on your calipers as well as on your wheel cylinders, because if they don't open up, you'll be changing those calipers too, because you need to bleed the air out of the system once you replace that line. In this particular case, I already did open up these bleeder valves just to make sure, because I had to quote the customer a price, and they open up okay. So we're going to be able to bleed these out once the lines are replaced. So let's grab some tools, and we're going to start in the back, and we'll change that one first. Okay, here we are. We're going to replace this line here on the right side first. Obviously you want to have a bucket down below to keep from losing any of the brake fluid onto the ground. Then we just loosen up these bolts here. Sometimes they come right out, sometimes they don't. You want to use always what's called a line wrench to do something like that. In this particular case, it's a 13mm line wrench. A line wrench is actually grips it on 6 sides versus, or I should say 5 sides, versus just grabbing it on the top and bottom. So we'll do it this way here. You'll avoid stripping the line out in some cases. Other cases you really won't. Came right out. Same thing here. was very unusual. Most of the time these lines do not come out. A lot of times they're rusted solid inside there because of the year of the vehicle. We'll just take these out, remove them. After we have these out, we'll take the line out and replace it with a new one. Next thing we're going to need to do is to take off these clips right here. There's one clip here and there's another clip down there. We need to take those clips out to pull that line out. So 2 different ways you can do it. One, you can grab it with a pair of vice grips and just rock it and it pulls right out. It's just a clip like this. It just holds it in there. So you just take this out. We're going to use it over again, so don't lose it. Here is a little bit tight. You can't get in there with a pair of vice grips. So what we'll do is we'll get in there with our pry bar, small pry bar I should say, and just tap it. And it comes out. You just work it back and forth on both sides and it comes right out. The reason I put my hand there is because it'll go flying across the room and you'll never see it again. So that's why my hand is in the way. Alright, then you just take these out and we get our replacements and put our replacements in. Now, there's only one way that these can go in, so you want to make sure that that little notch here lines up here where it's supposed to, and you'll feel it when it snaps in. Now before you put your clip back on, you catch your line, your brake line into the fitting first, because now you can work it around and maneuver it to get the line to catch. Once that clip is in there, you're not going to be able to. And we'll just put this one back in place here, and you'll feel it push right back in. Again, it's got that little clip in there, and then you tighten up the brake line by hand first, and then before you tighten it up all the way, what we're going to do is we're going to put those clips back on. And the way you put the clip back on is just an opposite way of the way you took it off. Put it on here. Push your line in and line it up. And put your clip in. And then you take a hammer and you tap it in. And it locks that clip in place. Same thing on this side over here. Now, you're going to put the clip back in the way you took it out. Make sure your line is down all the way. And you can put your clip in, and then we'll just tap that clip back in place there too. A little bit tight getting in there. So if you had trouble getting in this way, put it in from the other side this way here, and then you can lock it all the way in that way too. It doesn't make any difference which way this particular clip goes. Alright, now after you have that done, you tighten up your lines. They got to be pretty snug because you don't want to have any hydraulic leaks of brake fluid when your assistant bleeds the brakes with you. So we'll tighten it up pretty tight. And we'll do the same thing down here. Okay, that's it. We're all set. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch to the other side. We're going to change the other brake line, and then we're going to bleed these back brakes out. So let's do the other side, and then we'll come right back and I'll show you how to bleed them. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to break these lines loose. We're going to loosen up this 13 millimeter here, and we're going to loosen up this 13 millimeter here. Now when you take these lines out, you have to make sure that the nut turns and that the line doesn't twist. So let's get started on it. it's a little bit tight to get in there, so I'm using a short stubby wrench to get in there, get a little more room. So we're just going to take that and unscrew it. Now, I'm going to loosen up this one up here. Okay. Let me show you what I was talking about. In this particular one, we do have a problem with it. Now, you see this here? You see this brake line? When you turn this line here, see how the line itself, the brake line turns? The fitting is not turning. The fitting is actually rusted into there. So you have two alternatives here. You can replace the brake line, which you may not want to do, especially if it's a customer's vehicle, because they're not going to want to incur the extra expenses, because that line goes all the way up to the front of the vehicle there. Or you could break it loose, and now what we're going to do, I'll show you. Okay, now the line is broken loose, and now we already have this one disconnected over here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take out the lock clip down there that holds it in place. We're just going to pry it out with a pry bar. If you can get in there with a pry bar, fine. If you can't get in here with a pry bar, you can also use a pair of vice grips to lift it out. This is pretty rusty, so we're going to get vice grips in there. Just connect on the top of your vice grips, and you should be able to get it out of there with just a rocking motion. Should be. With rust is always an issue, though, you never know. We can just tap it up from the bottom, like this. But hold it because it's going to go flying. Alright, now we're out. Just a little clip like that, that's all. Alright, now we're going to take this line, take it out. Now we have to take that clip off up on top right there. Going to pry that clip down and out. Hold on to it because it goes flying. Alright, now what you're going to do is you just push your line back this way a little bit, and then instead of turning the nut, you unscrew the line itself by twisting it around and taking it off. Always match up your line to make sure it's the correct one. And what you're going to do is you're going to screw your line on. This is a little more difficult because you got to line it up now. All right, screw it on as far as you can. And then we have to line this up here to get the fitting to line up where it's supposed to. You just turn it until it snaps in. Sorry about blocking it. There it is. You can feel it snap right in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tighten it up a little bit. And we're going to see. We're going to put our clip back on up there. And you put the clip on the way you took it off, just like that, and then you tap it back in, and that's it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our line wrench being careful not to damage that line. Make sure it's nice and tight, which it is. Now, the line sometimes moves a little bit, but it beats having to change the entire line. All right, next thing we're going to do is let's get this other line back in there where it belongs. Put our line back in here, and then let's catch the, screw it in by hand as far as you can, like that. And then we're going to just turn our line until it snaps back in where it belongs. And then we're going to take our clip and reattach our clip back onto here and tap it in place. That's it. Now we'll just tighten up the brake line. Nice and tight. All right, so just be careful. It can be done without having to change the entire brake line. You just have to be careful when you put it back together and make sure everything goes together just the way it's supposed to, because it's a lot easier taking the additional time needed right now to make sure that this line is back in the way it belongs. All right, so if this nut doesn't turn on the line, then you just turn and rotate the rubber hose that's on there. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to get some brake fluid in this, and we're going to bleed out the brakes. But before we do this, we're going to go up to the front, and we're going to perform the same thing up in the front. So let me show you how the front ones are done now. Okay, here we are up in the front now. We're going to be changing the brake hoses up in the front here also. And as you can see, this hose is a little bit different. You've got a couple of clips here, and then it screws down into the caliper itself with a regular screw thread type fitting. So not really bad to do, fairly simple. I'll show you how to do that step by step also. Now this one I'm going to do a little bit differently than I did the backs, because the back was already empty. The master cylinder is actually full of fluid for the front, or somewhat full of fluid anyway. We're going to try to minimize the amount of fluid lost by pinching off the line, doing our work that we have to do, and then reassembling it. So, all right, let's get started. Okay, first thing we're going to do, because we do want to minimize that loss of fluid, we're just going to come over here. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here. We're going to make sure that these lines open up. The brake line opens up out of the rubber hose. Make sure you have a bucket down below, because you're going to start losing fluid. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if it turns, and it does turn. Main thing is that you see it turns, and it doesn't, the line itself is not twisting with it. All right, so now that we have that broken loose, next thing we want to do is you want to take those clips out right there. Now, as you remember, you can get in here with a pry bar, and you could just pry it out like this and try to get it out. Sometimes it's a pain in the rear end to do it because they're so rusted. But if that doesn't work, you can always get in here with a pair of vice grips and just grip it, and you can just rock it back and forth, and it comes right out fairly easy. All right, same thing on this clip right here. Grab this clip, nice and tight, back and forth, and you can pull it right out. Now, on this particular car, left and right side brake hoses with this particular truck, left and right brake hoses are all the same, so we don't have to worry about that. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down to where the line goes into to the brake cylinder. I'm sorry, where the line goes into the caliper, and we're going to, it's a 14 millimeter by the way, break that loose. Sometimes they're pretty tight, so we just break that loose. It is broken loose. Now we're going to try to do this as quick as we can, because we don't want to lose as too much brake fluid out of here. So, all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to loosen this line here. And you can unscrew it. Now the whole time it's going to be dripping, so we've got to work quickly. And then we're going to take this line here pull it down and out like this and like this. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our line wrench back on here and break that loose. And once you have the line loose enough that you can take it out by hand, you can just unscrew it like this. And that brake line is out. And then we're going to put a new brake line back in there. And the brake line, it's you screw it in by hand. You don't use any wrench on it or anything yet. You got to screw it down as far as you can by hand. Now you'll have to tighten this in before you can put your line back up on top there. So you screw it down all the way. Put your 14mm line wrench back on it and tighten it up. Fairly tight. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to come up here, and before we reconnect these, let's get our line connected up on top here so we stop the loss of fluid. Screw it in as far as you can by hand, and then, oh, this one already did pop down. The line itself, let me show you what the other side looks like. The line itself can only go in one way. You see that little notch right here? See that little notch right on the side there? That little notch has to fit into a little groove right up on top there, so there's only one way it can go. Alright, so now that we got that in there, we didn't tighten the line yet, but we're going to reinstall our clips that we previously took off. And we just tap it in. And we're going to reconnect this line here where it came out. Oops. Even Jim the car guy drops stuff once in a while. Alright, put this up in here. Put our clip here. Oh, snap right in already. Nice and tight. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten up that fitting up on top, that 13mm. Nice and snug. That's good. Just confirm this is tight here. Alright, nice and tight. Alright, now what I normally do is before I bleed out the brakes, I'll open up the bleeder valve and let it gravity bleed out first. Makes it a little bit easier with your assistant. So we'll just open this up and we're going to let this stay here until this starts to drip. Once this starts to drip, then we're going to close it back up. And once we close it up, then we know this entire line here is filled up with brake fluid then. So right now the fluid is actually making its way through here. So once it starts to drip, we close it up. Then we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to do the exact same procedure on the other side, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to bleed out the brakes all the way around so we got a nice firm pedal. So let me switch over to the other side, and let's get the other side wrapped up. All right, gravity bleed is when you actually just have the fluid coming out of the bleeder valve by itself. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put this on hold until tomorrow because I need an assistant to bleed out the brakes the right way. But for now, this is pretty much how you're going to do it. You're going to have your assistant get inside the vehicle. They're going to sit up inside. They're going to pump the brake pedal. And as they pump the brake pedal, this valve here is closed. You have them pump the brake pedal until it's nice and firm up on top. And then you tell them to hold the brake pedal. You open the valve, let the fluid out. When the foot is to the floor, you close the valve. You have them pump it again 4 or 5 more times. Hold the brake pedal in the car. You open the valve up. They step all the way down to the floor again, and you do that repeatedly until all the air stops coming out of the bleeder valve. And that's it. You'll be all set. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope I saved you a lot of time and a lot of money. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.